You're listening to the Business Club for Grown-Ups podcast with Jessica Fearnley. Welcome to the Business Club for Grown-Ups podcast with me, Jessica Fearnley. Today I'm starting a new mini-series where I'm going to be talking about the 3 worst mistakes I've made in my business. And yeah, right before we've even started, you can already tell it's going to be a good one, can't you? I'm going to start this series off in today's episode and return to it in the new year with the next instalment. And why talk about mistakes? Well, because a lot of the time our mistakes in all of life, but especially our businesses, are the things we talk about the least. But I actually think this is a real missed opportunity because firstly, you should always be evaluating and reflecting on how things are going in your business. That's a really important part of your work, to be honest, and maybe it's the project manager in me, but an important part of the Prince 2 project management framework is documenting lessons learned. So for every project you have a lessons learned log, and that's a place where you reflect on all of the things that haven't gone quite right in the project or in that phase of the project. And it's really valuable information because if you think about it, if you or someone on a project team messes something up and never tells anyone or never openly admits to messing it up, there's nothing to stop the mistake happening again. So the logic is by documenting the mistake, or even just the thing that happened that maybe wasn't technically a mistake but could be done better next time, everyone learns and the business is strengthened. So that's a big part of it. Firstly, not all mistakes are actually mistakes if we learn something important, but also sometimes it's just an opportunity to say, actually we could do this better. And personally, you'll already know this if you listen to episode 14 where I talk about the traits that make you a terrible employee but an excellent entrepreneur. I can't bear it when things are done in a shoddy way in a business and no one does anything about it. You know that whole, we're a small business, so we can't possibly be expected to be good at customer service. I've always seen small businesses as the perfect context to get things right. And learning lessons as we go is one of the best ways to do this. But I think the second thing is that as entrepreneurs with a personal brand, we can really shy away from openly admitting the things we've messed up in our businesses. We can feel a lot of pressure to look perfect and keep our game face on all the time. But I actually think this doesn't serve your audience because for me, as someone who's been in business for 4 years now, there are things I've learned along the way, mistakes that I've made, that I want to spare others from repeating. I don't know about you, but it kind of grates with me when you hear these big name coaches talk about things in their businesses as if they're being really vulnerable. And that vulnerability consists of them being like, I felt really discouraged in my business for like a day. And that's great, but it's just so far away from the reality day to day of being in the trenches with a new business and getting it off the ground. And everything is about mindset problems, sales and marketing problems, fears that you'll go bankrupt or run out of money, fears that you're insane for trying to do the business you're trying to do. For me, that honesty about what I've been through in my own business, I want it to be more than just, I didn't feel great about the future of my business. I want it to be something that really helps those of you listening who are feeling like they've messed things up so badly already and feeling so alone because you can't always broadcast these things at the time that they're happening. So I hope you'll enjoy this episode. The end of the year is a great time to reflect back on how your business has done over the last 12 months. And I'm going to be sharing not just things from this year, but in the last 4 years of my business. And there are some zingers. I think you'll love hearing about them. But I'm not going to just drop all these confessional truth bombs and then leave it at that. I'm also going to share what I learned from the mistake and how I do things differently now. Because as well as admitting when things haven't gone 100% as planned, it's also important to have a plan in place for avoiding that mistake in the future. And I also want to point out that these mistakes are not the only ones I've made in my business. I've made absolutely loads. Everyone who's had a business for any length of time will have done the same. Some weeks are just full of mistakes, but these are the ones that stand out the most as the biggest, the most memorable, and the ones that have really given me pause in my business. So let's dive in. First of all, and this one is huge, I got into debt. And this is something that at the time that it happened, I was just so disappointed with myself that I'd let myself get into this situation. I was brought up in a family where we do not take out loans, we do not have credit cards or anything like that. Mortgages and student loans, they're okay. But my parents were always really against being in debt of any kind, and it was really ingrained into me, okay, this is not how we do things. And I'll tell you a little bit about how it all came about because I don't think I'm the only person this has ever happened to, but I do think it's something that we can have a really hard time talking about. So I started my business with almost zero capital. I think I invested £200 from personal savings, and my goal was to always get the business to pay for things I wanted to invest in. So my first business cards, my first website, those kinds of staple things you just need in a business to get it off the ground. And in my first year of business, I did around £6,000 turnover, which honestly, as I look back on it, was sort of a miracle because I was really new to running a business on my own. I didn't have any kind of strategy going on. It was all low-hanging fruit, mostly work I got through offline networking, and I was just testing the water really. My prices were super low, but I just started to experiment with raising them. I did 4K of the 6K total in just 1 month in January 2016, and that felt so amazing, but it was also completely overwhelming. And at the time, I'd done a couple of courses and a couple of masterminds, but I was still really new to the online space, and it was funny in a way looking back because I totally lucked out with my first investment on a course for my business, a course that I did in September 2015, which cost £600 at the time I did it. And for me back then, £600 was such a huge amount of money. I paid for it from savings with permission from my husband because the money wasn't just mine, it was both of ours. But during the course of the programme, the lady running it had said she could guarantee we'd make back the cost of the programme and more. And during the 8 weeks of the course, I totally did. I made £800 just during those 8 weeks, which was the most I'd made in my business at the time. And then in the January, I went on to have my biggest month ever, which was the 4K month. So therein sort of lay the problem. I'd had a ridiculously good experience in my first ever course. And I was like a kid in a sweet shop with all these amazing promises from other coaches. And I thought, wow, the online space is so exciting. I'm literally changing my entire life having set up this business. And there were 2 mistakes that I think I made at this point, which at the time, I think I had to make them to learn from them. And I really did learn so much that year. Unfortunately, a lot of it was hard lessons, but I'd had this amazing experience investing in a course that at the time was a stretch for me, and the whole narrative sort of went, okay, when you invest in something, it always has to be a stretch, and then you just have to keep up leveling. So the next investment had to be bigger than £600, and it was a real test of my faith in my business at that time. Like, am I scared to invest that money? Because in business, we make an investment that brings a return. That's sort of the game. So I really felt at the time, I can't move forward if I'm not willing to make the next investment. But that can be a tricky game to be playing, because the 2 mistakes I made at that stage were, firstly, I assumed that easy sales to that point meant I had an established sales funnel. I assumed that additional new sales would come my way because they had to, right? Because I'd already made some sales, so I clearly knew how to do it. And actually, I hear people say this kind of thing online a lot, like, hey, I'm celebrating this week because I signed 5 clients, my business is established, hooray! But there's a difference between clients blowing through your door through luck and actually having an established lead generation and sales process. At that stage in my business, I did not have these things, and boy, did I pay the price for it. Then secondly, because I'd assumed that 4K a month was the new normal for me, and honestly, that freaked me out more than anything else that has ever happened in my business. At that time, I had no category for that kind of success or income. And it just terrified me. It changed everything about my sense of identity and how I viewed myself and the potential in my business. I said in episode 14 that I really had no confidence in myself at that point because I'd never really been in a situation where I'd felt genuinely good at stuff. I just absorbed all this negativity from the world around me, and I taught myself to process everything as negative. I must have been such a draining person to be around, and I'm so thankful for friends who must have had a lot to put up with but love me anyway, and I'm so thankful to have made progress with mindset through doing my business. It really has made such a huge difference to almost every part of my life. But I had a young baby at the time, and looking back, that first year with him was a real nightmare. I sort of knew that at the time, and I was overweight and unhappy, and part of that drove me to start my business because I just needed something to do. But the more I've read about birth trauma recently, the more I see that first year with my son in a completely different light, because I wasn't okay actually. And I think more recently I've come to understand that even more than I did at the time. So with that as the context, this very low self-image and lack of confidence and lack of expectation of what I was able to achieve, suddenly I did 4K of sales in 1 month and my whole view of myself imploded. I felt so shaken up, like what on earth is going on? How can I be doing this well? I'm the person who messes everything up. Ask my family. And I think that was a big part of the reason that I did sort of mess things up from that point on, because I got in a real funk about my business doing well. I kept hearing that I needed the secret sauce. I needed the one thing that would totally change my business, because very quickly from my 4K month, I just lost the ability to sell anything for a little while. And I was being told I had to up-level my investment in my business by working with a high-level coach, and I needed something that I didn't already have. And I'd had such a great experience on this first course that I did. And from there, I came across other coaches, and I remember this one sales call that, to my credit, even as someone completely naive about the online space at the time, I was just like, there is no way I trust this person. Because I felt like I wanted the 4K months to continue, and everyone was saying I just had to join Facebook groups and find clients. But I didn't know which Facebook groups, and I didn't know what to do once I was in them. So I had a discovery call with a coach who'd been a speaker in an online summit I watched, and she seemed so amazing. I loved her free PDF workbook giveaway, so I signed up for a sales call with her and just really liked what she offered. But I didn't have $5,000 to invest in it. And this coach did something that I look back on and I just really think, ugh, I never want anyone to be in this situation under my brand. She really wanted to make the sales, so she told me I should borrow the money to work with her. I should ask my parents, take out a loan, get a credit card. It was a no-brainer because I would obviously make the money back. But I wasn't keen to do this, and that's when the hard sell really started. So she sent me videos about why my limiting beliefs were holding me back, and I'd really regret it if I didn't work with her. I was ruining my business by not working with her. And it totally turned me off. I was just like, okay, no way am I doing this with this lady. But at the same time, when the next investment opportunity came along, it was like a light bulb went on. Like, hey, credit cards, that's a good way to fast forward on this whole being able to afford stuff problem that I'm having. And because I really believed I didn't have the skills I needed to build my business, that I needed someone to show me what to do, because everyone around me was making it look so easy. And there were so many other people making connections in Facebook groups and posting about how brilliant they were at everything. I was really convinced there was a magic formula that I just needed to learn. And that year for me was just learning that all of that stuff is total rubbish. I worked with coaches who made big promises and got me zero results. I've been told I really needed to take myself seriously and invest in a support team and all of these things, but my sales really slumped and I had all of this pressure of suddenly increasing the outgoings in my business, but at the same time just not really knowing what I was doing wrong, because the leads in my business just sort of evaporated all at the same time. And honestly, it was a scary time in my business. Looking back, I know I felt really under pressure through that phase, and I ended up with £8,000 on a credit card, which for someone who had freaked out at spending £600 on a course, that was a huge amount of money, a huge amount of debt, and it happened pretty fast. Because at first I was like, we're all good, it's fine, I've had a slow month, it'll pick up. One client means all my costs are covered and then everything will be great again. But I think everything just got inside my head with the unexpected success I'd had and then the pressure of running the business at a loss. But after a few more months, I was like, okay, I just have to shut this thing down. And I felt very torn because I had such big dreams for my business, but at the same time, it was clearly becoming such a nightmare. I looked into taking on part-time work, but when you're a mum, there's honestly no point with a lot of roles because taking into account childcare and travel, I'd be breaking even at best. It wouldn't help pay back the debt, and it was sort of ridiculous because the only thing I could do was keep going with the business. I'm a Christian, my husband is a vicar in the Church of England, and I remember praying about my business a lot at this point and just saying to God, like, what should I do? It feels like I'm not doing well at this and I should really quit. Show me what to do to fix this. And I had a couple of opportunities come up that would have meant ditching the business and getting some form of job instead. But both times it really felt like God just closed the door on those opportunities. Like in my mind, it made perfect sense to stop the business and get a job and just pay back the debt and all that kind of thing. But things that just should have worked out fell through in ways that made no sense. So I started to get the feeling that for whatever reason, I was on the path I was supposed to be on. It made me pretty nervous about where the path was going, but I consciously tried to quit my business on more than one occasion and just ended up back running the business. And in the end, I thought, let's just fix this and stop trying to be somewhere else. At this point, we had two businesses as well. So I remember talking to my husband and being like, oh gosh, this is going so badly. It's such a nightmare. And he was like, don't be silly. You've got two businesses. One is going really well and keeping us fed. And the other one, well, yeah, it does need some work. And my husband is such a huge supporter of my business. And it means so much more because he was probably one of the only people I spoke to about all of this at the time it was happening. And he could have been really furious with me. I was pretty furious with myself, but he was so sure that coaching was the right thing for me. And really talked me off the ledge with it quite a few times because I really love the work I do. And even at that time, I had existing clients I was working with and I was getting really good results for them. It was all the more frustrating because I was like, why can't I do this for my own business? But then my career experience was with taking a business I was in charge of running from low 6 figures to 7 figures. And so I'd never actually experienced the early stage of my kind of business at that point. Now I've been through what felt like a real issue in my own business and learned some hard lessons at my own expense. I just know so much more about what not to do, and I'm really thankful for that in a way. And I'm actually really thankful for that. Whatever state your business is in, there's a place for having a complete meltdown and feeling all the negative stuff that goes with that. But then I saw really clearly that what I needed was not a big sulk, but some serious action. So I got my head down and I worked through it. The first thing to do, and this is the lessons log coming into play now, was completely rethink my business model, which I did. I'd been relying on rolling one-to-one sales, but that really wasn't suited to the way I wanted to do my business. I hated marketing and sales. I think I like it quite a lot more now, and I've learned so much through all the courses I did back then. Sometimes I feel like I learned a lot more about what not to do, but it's all good learning, and nothing is ever wasted in a business. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. But I really wanted to take the pressure off that monthly, I just have to make sales or I'll die feeling. And I didn't really enjoy the model I'd been taught of do anything you can to get them on a call and then don't let them off the call until they've signed up. I really passionately believe that there's a way of working we're naturally suited to. And if you're trying to do things you're out of alignment with, they just do not work. There's exceptions to that now and then, but I've seen it so much. We're told, hey, do these 3 magic things and your business will skyrocket. But I just don't think it's true. I was building a bit of an audience by this point because it's amazing how productive you can be when you don't have any clients to see. Actually, I don't think I ever had any months with literally no clients, but I was working with existing clients and not making the new sales I wanted to be making. So my way out of this whole situation was to stop doing what everyone else was talking about online and just talk to my own audience. And from there, a completely new direction for my business came about. I spoke to the people who were most engaged in the Facebook group I had at the time and asked them what they wanted. And they came up with this idea of a subscription-based mastermind program. And I was just like, what? It honestly didn't appeal at all. I really didn't want to run a group program. I had this fear that if I couldn't sell to one person, how on earth could I sell to several? But there was something very powerful about lowering the bar to working with me and starting to scale my business instead of only offering one-to-one. The first time I ran my mastermind, and bear in mind that I know now everyone and their gran seems to be launching a mastermind, but at that point I started mine. It was sort of something that made people go, what's a mastermind? But yeah, the first time I ran my mastermind, I was making £90 a month, but I made it consistently for 4 months and something in me just clicked and I was like, oh, this is how I like to do business. Do the sales in one big fat launch and then disappear and deliver until the next launch. And I've had income every single month since that first mastermind more than 2 years ago. And as my business has grown and my audience has grown and I've added in extra layers and programs to my business, it's just been something that has been more and more profitable. I paid off my last credit card earlier this year and I was just like, hooray, because it felt like such an achievement. And I think I felt about a ton lighter because honestly, anyone can mess up a business. I see it loads and it makes me really sad. And of course, I really empathise because I know that feeling of being really up against it and feeling all the worse about it because you can't escape the fact that you did it to yourself. And if you'd never have started the business, it never would have happened. Anyone can mess up their business, but not everyone can stick around to fix the mess that it's in. So the second thing I did was to make sure that every month in my business was a profitable month. I stripped back everything as far as possible. I was able to cut my running costs right down. For a while, the only costs in my business were software related, and I have a blog post about this that I'll share in the show notes, but I basically share the details of the tools I used in my business at that stage. Some are paid, some were free, but I break down the free ones and then the paid ones I later upgraded them to. And one of the things I've found difficult in the last 18 months of my business has been getting to the point again where I'm able to outsource stuff. And there is money there to get help with my business, but it's like a panic button where I just go, no, I can't possibly do that. Spending money is bad. And that's why I love spreadsheets such a lot, because finances and a business are factual. They're not based on how we feel about how we're doing. And that's been such an important thing for me as I've moved on to the next stage of my business, which I have to say has been pretty great in comparison. It's funny though, looking back on this whole period of my business back in 2016, at the time it was my everyday experience. It was this giant black cloud I didn't know if I was ever going to get out of. But realising it wasn't several years long, which in my head it had sort of been feeling like, it was actually only a few months, but it was such a hard time. And I think the me of then wouldn't have actually believed it would be possible to move from where I was in my business then to where I actually am now. It's amazing the things we can do in our businesses if we really commit to trying. Not just, oh yeah, I'll try, but that tenacious, determined dog with a bone that will not let go. I can look back now and see that I wasn't really ready to have the business I now have at that stage of things. I had growing to do. I had to put the building blocks in place, and I was trying to rush the process. You basically can't rush the process because so much of building a business is tied up with your own personal growth. If you seriously doubt yourself, you will find ways to sabotage what you're doing each and every day. And that's one of the reasons that as much as I'm putting this in an episode called The Biggest Mistakes I've Made in My Business, I don't actually feel regret about getting into debt in my business because thankfully I was able to put the things in place that got the business out of that phase. It taught me such a lot. It opened my eyes to the reality of how deceptive the online business coaching space can be. It helped me to articulate my frustration with coaches I paid a lot of money to work with who just weren't able to actually help me. Some coaches are really great at marketing and positioning their own services. So when you read their content, it's like, oh wow, I have to have this. But they aren't necessarily as good at helping people do something that's not 100% the same as that. It showed me a really clear picture of the things I will not do in my own business. I never tell people to take on debt to work with me. I never use aggressive closing techniques on sales calls. I always want people to trust me and to be the right clients for me. They have to also agree that I'm the right coach for them. And increasingly in my business, people have spoken to several coaches and they've told me in our sales calls that they're picking me because it feels like the right fit. And I feel really proud of that. I don't want to manipulate people into working with me. I want to get good results for all my clients because we're on the same page. But it's also been a really key thing behind setting up my membership group, the Business Club for Grown-Ups. I wanted to create something that was affordable for women just starting out with their businesses so that they don't end up in the situation I was in. I can't honestly say that these haven't been fantastic lessons to have learned in my business. I just wish that the process of learning them hadn't been quite so painful at the time, but even that was really, really useful for me to learn. So I hope that's a helpful starting episode for you as we come to the end of 2018. I hope it's given you hope that whatever is going on in your business, there is a way to move past it. And even if you just feel like, what on earth can I do about this? There is always something you can do. And I think it's important to talk about these things in our businesses. If you have more going out than coming in each month, that is fixable, even if it doesn't feel like it. The worst thing you can do is bury your head in the sand and hope that it will just go away or sort itself out. If you're very lucky, it might. But it's much better to face these things head on, eyes open, and take the steps you need to, even if those steps scare you or mean making some big decisions for your business. And it could be that you've listened to this and been like, you only got into £8,000 of debt, because it's a personal one in lots of ways, isn't it? And I've come across people who had way more debt than that because of their business. I even read a post in a Facebook group a while back where someone was saying they'd gone from $100,000 in debt to having a business turnover of $100,000. And I was like, okay, wow, you are comfortable with a lot more risk than I am. I think the key thing is we all have personal rules that we abide by in our businesses. And mine has really been that I don't want to rack up a ton of debt in mine. I don't think you have to get into debt to build a business. I think you do have to invest, but that can look like a lot of different options. And I wanted to tell this story because it can be something that gets bandied about. Oh, hey, just put the cost of this or that on a credit card and pay it back when you make your next sale. And there's a point in your business where it does become about scaling. And once you have a cast iron sales funnel that you've tested and perfected and you know it works, that's when it's a great idea to go big on ad spend or promotions, because you can turn an investment of several thousand into a return of tens of thousands or even more. But there's a time and a place for that strategy, and you need to know that your business is viable before you jump in with both feet. So I'll be back in 2019 with the next big mistake I made in my business. I don't think the next ones are quite as dramatic as this first one, so don't panic too much if you're listening to this and thinking, what? How can there be more? I just really think it's important to air some of these things and to talk openly about the things we've messed up in our businesses, because if you can't admit them, you can't learn from them, and it becomes like the emperor's new clothes, doesn't it? The thing I was really struck by when I delved a little deeper into the online business coaching world was how much it was like this ridiculous pyramid scheme, where people paid lots of money to work with coaches who had paid lots of money to work with coaches who had taught them to charge lots of money, and the whole cycle just keeps on going. It really bothered me because it was this huge thing of like, is this what I do as a business coach? Because I actually started coaching because I want to help people and not just perpetuate this cycle of what actually feels like a really hollow service. I feel really aligned with what I've done in my business and under my brand, where I don't play that game of the magic formula and I don't rip people off or pretend stuff is amazing when it isn't. I'll tell someone if I don't think we should work together, because for me, the most important thing isn't making the sale any sale. But I think it's really important to give my clients that permission to be honest about how things are going as well, and to know that it's okay to make mistakes in our businesses as we grow and develop. I have a running joke with several of my clients that I generally want to quit my business about 3 times every year, because we have those days where it doesn't feel like things are going in the direction we want them to, and it can feel uncomfortable at whatever stage of business you're at. And that's okay. Let's learn from our mistakes, because that's all part of the journey. And if you try to move forward in your business without ever getting anything wrong, it's really hard to achieve anything. It's all part of the journey. So thanks for listening, and don't forget to come back and join me for the next instalment. I'll see you next time. You've been listening to the Business Club for Grown-Ups podcast with Jessica Fearnley. To find out more, visit thebusinessclubforgrownups.com.